27 people weighing in on the poll. 21 of you said, no, we are not prepared. And 6 said, yes, we are. All right. But as somebody indicated, you can really never be totally prepared. I guess individually people can be prepared because there's some people who just live in areas that won't flood and won't have issues, you know what I mean? They live in a very well-constructed home and whatnot, you know, so they don't really fear these things. Of course, it depends on the intensity of it, because I remember one night, sometime last year, I thought my roof was going to blow off because the kind of intensity it had in the area. I don't know, it was very, very unusual. I remember posting about it, and a lot of people commented about it, that particular, and it was without warning. So this time you have warning, you know?
Yeah.
So
You know that custom the strong blowing?
No. Winds where I live is
Okay.
generally calm. You know? Although I
think I
live
like
in
you
an
be
open
accustomed to-
area, I have nothing north of me, and I have nothing east of me.
So you get full blast.
It's open space, so I get full blast when and
You get the full blow.
yep. So with even the slightest rain that falls, I have windows on that side of the house generally don't close, generally don't open. You know, because the minute you leave it open and you walk away for
Wet
say
down.
you know you to come back, trouble. You know? And I don't know. I think I get sea blast up here because we get rusting a lot.
Where you getting sea blast from though?
I don't even know, but it happens. I've seen it with other people in the neighborhood too. The eastern side, the windows rust.
But it's because you're exposed to the wind. There's no interruption from the wind generally.
Yeah. But
All right. So our guest has asked to give him 5 minutes again. That's Mr. Brian Manning.
oh, okay.
Right. So in 5 minutes, I will call him. Well, in 4 minutes, really. And we'll chat with him.
All right. And I guess we're going to be speaking general areas of finance with Brian Manning. And the issue of the Bitcoin that seemed to have collapsed. I didn't keep that story, you know, because I have a few people who have tried to encourage me to get involved with that Bitcoin thing. And I said no, emphatically no.
How
So
much of
maybe
Bitcoin now?
I know that Brian had a lot to say on it, you know.
Well, he articulated the position of the government. They're not in favor of endorsing it, so.
Yeah. Has
Bitcoin
any
is-
government in the Caribbean endorsed it? Embraced it?
I think Barbados uses some level of it. Barbados have gone the way of some level of endorsement. I believe I could stand corrected, but I think I read somewhere that they'd been honoring Bitcoin at some level of trading.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. But I'm doing Ragoobarsingh, he on, he off. What's going on with him?
He might be on the road.
No,
I'm supposed to be on the road, but I'll hold on a bit longer. And as much as we have an actual guest on camera with us, I'll hold on a bit longer.
No, he's on phone.
Oh, he's on phone.
Yeah, Brian is on phone. He said it's early o'clock. Can't do Zoom, but he can do phone.
Well, whilst we wait on him, let's squeeze a couple calls. Unless Paul has something you want to raise there. You know, you say it,
I'm
and
going to a
after the
call.
last word comes out your mouth,
Good
you
morning,
realize what
caller.
you said. That's what happened.
Yeah, if I could touch on it, matter, right?
You want to touch on the what?
The matter now,
Which matter?
the abortion.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Right. As I said, so somebody once asked why men spinning them out in this, right? It comes back down to something that somebody, that caller all stated. The woman had the right to say it without my permission if she wanted the child or not. So she could terminate it or bring it without my permission. But yet, if you get rid of it and I wanted it, hard luck for me. But if it is, I didn't want it and she keep it, I still had to be forced to mind something. So then if you had the right to say that, no, this part goes song back, but then if a man also want the right to say, well, since you wanted it and I didn't want it, I should have the right not to be in each other's life or whatnot. It just come back down to the whole fact that there is no equality in nothing when it comes to man and woman and certain decisions.
Oh, that's interesting. But men could choose still at the end of the day not to be in a child's life, eh? But and if the woman goes to court financially, you'll be obligated. But you could choose not to be in a child's life, you know?
But even that is flawed, because even if you do a DNA test and they prove that the child is not yours, once again, because the system is people have to support women, they will tell you that you still have to pay maintenance because that is beneficial to the child. It don't matter if, and that's considered fraud, because now I'm forced to mind something that is not mine biologically. But because the court is built for the woman, I'm forced to mind the child because it's beneficial to the child.
I never understood that. I never understood.
Yeah.
And he's right. If there's a child out of a relationship and the courts indicate that you are to take care of the child, which they should because it's your responsibility, and it's later found out that that child is not yours, in most cases or many cases, you still have to continue contributing to that child.
Yeah.
When clearly a fraud has been perpetrated against you.
But it also affects mental health for a man now, because not only might it be a little vindictive, but it is showing that you have no power, no say. So it's taking away your freedom as a man to express whatever it is, even if it's having a proper communication and relationship with the child. They're now taking that away from you. So when we mentally break down and due to the world and society, men are supposed to have feelings or show a true emotion. So we had all these things for ourselves, but once again affects us mentally. So everything have a chain reaction, but as I said, it's have equality. It is not the system is made for women.
Yeah.
That's my question.
I hear you, sir, and you might be very right, because when you think about what men are expected of men and what men go through, but the women's groups, to their credit, they have had a lot of people fighting for them, eh? They've had a lot of groups, very powerful.
And let's not kid ourselves, because people like to talk about this equality thing, but men and women are not the same. When a pregnancy starts, biologically men can't carry children. So women are in a more vulnerable state when they become pregnant. And that's why society's laws generally tend to err on the side of protecting the woman and the unborn child.
Yeah.
You understand? That's a fact. You can't get away from that. And it's very easy for a man to walk away, but a woman can't walk away when she becomes pregnant because the child is inside of her.
Progress.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Let's welcome Mr. Brian Manning. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, guys. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. I hope you had an enjoyable weekend.
Wasn't bad at all.
Morning, Mr. Manning. Of course, Brian Manning is the Member of Parliament for San Fernando East and the Minister in the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah. Of course, we have Richard Ragoobarsingh. Well, you know that voice already. No introduction needed there. And then you know the other voice that you'll hear shortly. No introduction there as well. That would be Paul Richards and Wendell Stephen. Of course, Richard is somewhere in Never Never Land.
I'm glad. Good morning, Brian Manning. I'm glad that Shelley insists you complete your breakfast with her before you go on any talk shows.
Yeah, that's very good.
I have to be ready to deal with you guys. I need all of my strength and energy.
Oh, so you had like 5 doubles then?
Yeah, not nearly.
I was going to be mischievous and leave the meal a mystery, Steve, but you spoilt it. Good morning, Brian Manning. Thanks for joining us this morning. There's several issues under your portfolio. Well, yours and Minister of Finance, Colmember, who is the acting Prime Minister, which means you run the whole Ministry of Finance these days.
I wouldn't go that far, but I have an increase in my responsibilities, yeah.
I'm sure. We wanted to start to talk about the NIB situation and questions answered by the substantive minister. And of course, the issue of contributions and the possibility of changing the age of retirement.
Retirement age.
And the vagaries of that, given that they said coming up soon, based on the level of contributions, the fund will not be able to sustain the payouts that will be necessary. Give us some overall context on that, please.
Yes. Recently, we had the ILO actuary report. And the ILO, as you know, is an international independent organization that does actuarial services for state-sponsored retirement funds. And, it's an issue all over the world in terms of what's going on with various retirement funds because it was something unexpected. Some people would think that due to maybe persons not paying their NIS payments and so on, that there's a problem with the fund, but that isn't so. What's going on is actually a challenge that comes from something that has been positive, which is simply that people have been living longer, healthier lives. And because of that, it means that we have to pay out more benefits at the end of the day. But the workforce is shrinking because people, of course, are having less children than they used to. I'm sure many of us remember our parents and grandparents come from families of 6, 7, 8, sometimes 8 children. While, this generation or future generations are having 2, 1, maybe 3 at most in terms of children. So the way the fund is structured is that the people who work now, along with the returns from the investments of the fund, pay out the benefits now. Okay, some people think that you've been putting money into the NIS and it goes into an account with your name on it, and then you get paid from that account after you retire. That is absolutely not the case. Retirement NIS benefits come from the persons contributing to the NIS right now, and also the investment returns from the actual fund. So, say like in the United States, we have the baby boomer generation. People who came back from World War II and then had multiple children. But then their children went on to have less children. And now that baby boom generation is coming towards retirement, it is putting a strain on the fund. So the way the fund is, you basically, the recommendations that came from the ILO, you basically have a handful of choices. You can either increase the intake of the fund, which would mean increasing contributions, which the government has said we absolutely do not want to do at this point in time. We do not want to increase contributions. Okay? You can increase the returns from the fund, and we have been doing that by trying to get more business owners to be compliant in terms of making payments towards the fund. Also, increasing the percentage of the fund that is invested in international investments such as stocks and so on, and that has really borne fruit. Recently, the fund had a 14% return on investment, which is a record for the fund. And then the final aspect of what you can do is, of course, decrease benefits on the other end, which is something we also don't want to do. So the most palatable application of the recommendations is to increase the retirement age. And if you look right here in the region, quite a few countries have done it already. Barbados has increased their retirement age to 67. And I believe Jamaica is already at 65. And we are seeking to do something similar to really preserve the longevity of the fund for our children and our grandchildren and future generations.
What is required, though, to make that decision, Amber?
Say that one more time, please.
What is required? Does it require a special majority of the parliament to make a decision like that? Or is it a simple financial act?
No, it has to come to the parliament, but it does not require a special majority.
It does not?
No.
Okay. So is it something that is being actively pursued by the government at this point in time?
Yes, because it is a recommendation of the ILO, and that's why I've been in meetings with the various trade unions, also with the business associations, to really have a discussion on exactly what the ILO recommendations have been and why they're important, what the government is considering, what it is you believe should be done, so that all of this is taken into consideration before we develop an actual final policy that, of course, will go out for public comment and eventually get to the parliament.
Because there are implications that aren't there. Because one, it would not be optional. Persons who would have been working toward, let's say they decide to do this in 2030.
It is optional.
It'll be optional. So you'll have the option to retire at 60 or 65.
Yes, it'll be implemented on a phased basis over a 10-year period, actually. And you have the option of retiring at 65 or 60. Thank you very much for bringing that up. That's an important point. But you will pay a penalty But every 2 years, if you decide to retire before 65, like say in the first 2 years, we would raise the retirement age from 60 to 61. And then after another 2 years, it would be from 61 to 62, and so on until we get to 65. So if you decide that, say, when the retirement age has been moved to 61, to still retire at 60, you would have to incur a 6% penalty on your benefit, right? But you're still eligible for the other benefits, such as the senior citizens grant or what was called the old age pension.
Does that penalty put you in the range of getting less than you would have gotten if you were to retire at 60 in the present scenario?
It would. 6%, a 6% penalty is what it is, right?
Minister, I'm hearing you, and I'm just wondering from a legal perspective, if somebody's terms and conditions, because you're talking about terms and conditions of employees, and you'll have terms and conditions of established officers in the public service that would indicate that their retirement age is 60. So you're now purporting to change a term and condition for which they have already been confirmed.
No,
doesn't that raise an IR issue?
You can't have a requirement that violates the law of the land. Once the law of the land is changed, and also again remember it's optional. But also keep in mind all of the payments that come out of the NIS, all of the things that the NIS has to fund, and which is why we have a duty to ensure that the NIS fund is properly managed, because there are also a host of benefits such as sickness, maternity, there's special maternity, funeral grants, retirement pension, retirement grant, employment injury allowance, medical expenses, disability, widow's pension, dependent parent pension, widows, orphans allowance. All of these things are being paid for by the NIS and that fund. So we have to keep that in mind.
I just wanted you to clear up one thing, because the last time we had this conversation with our listeners, I remember one calling in and saying that it's not that the retirement age per se, like right now it's 60 for public servants, and it's not that that's moving to 65, but that the NIS benefits, which would be usually payable at 60 when you retire at 60, would now move to 65.
Yes, and NIS benefit, correct.
So the NIS benefit that's going to be payable from 65.
Correct.
But is it that people are is it that the retirement age, which is currently 60, is also moving to 65?
The age for the NIS benefit is being moved to 65.
Incrementally
On
over
a phase basis.
And even so, you have the option after age 60 to retire, but you have to do so at a penalty. So from a lot of the discussions that we've had, there are quite a number of people who are happy to earn a full salary for an extra 5 years. Whether they have
you're confusing me there now. I don't know if anybody else is getting confused, but I'm getting confused because.
One second, let me finish. So there are persons who would want to pay off debt, or want to pay off a mortgage, would want 5 more years to increase their savings. So there are a lot of benefits to persons having 5 extra years of work. But of course, not everyone would be happy with that, and that's why it is optional. What were you saying?
I'm still a little confused, because you're saying that the NIS benefit is payable from age 65, but retirement age remains at 60.
NIS benefit is payable from age 6, is being moved to age 65. That's what I'm saying.
Right. But you're also talking about the retirement age.
I'm not. I'm talking about NIS benefit, period.
Richard, I think what the minister is saying is that you can still retire at 60, but you will pay a penalty. I don't know why they're calling it penalty, but you'll get 6% less on whatever you would have collected then, because you have
NIS. You get 6% less than from your NIS.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
So the 33 1/3 that usually is the standard for the public service continues to operate once you reach age 60, etc.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once you make the requisite number of contributions.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
So you're still, as a public servant, for example, if you're in a confirmed position, you are still required to retire at age 60.
At this point in time,
Until
yes.
the law changes.
You all understand the two dynamics that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I think I understand, but I think once the law changes, Richard, that will automatically.
But the impression I'm getting from the minister is the law is changing to move the NIS benefit from 60 to 65.
There will be an
Does it mean that a public servant who reaches age 60 can elect to continue in the job until age 65, or they still have to retire at age 60, which is what obtains now?
Right. So that's a different question, and that's a good question.
yes.
For public servants.
Is what will continue in my view. The change that's being made is to the NIS payment. As to when you're eligible for that. Okay.
So you could ride out, Richard, in the sunset at 60, but just know once the law kicks in before you reach the 60, that you'll get 6% less.
Yes. What is also being implemented is that you are free to work even after 60 or after you have reached the age of retirement. You know, before to be and still be eligible for the NIS payment. So
you mean before you had to go home?
Yes, you could officially retire, but then they can bring you back on contract.
On contract.
But they do that all the time now anyway.
Not all the time now.
And still be eligible for the NIS payment. In some cases, that isn't offered, but that is legal.
Right.
Changes that are being proposed.
But you know, Minister, I think for a lot of people who have been hearing this conversation taking place, a lot of people think that the mandatory retirement at age 60 is moving to age 65.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's because that what we're doing right now, we're really in discussions with the various stakeholders within the country. And as soon as that is done and we have a final position, we will come to the public and say, okay, this is what we have come up with. We put it out there for discussion. We're just in a very nascent stage in terms of where it is. The ILO, the international body I mentioned earlier, gave us several recommendations for extending the life of our NIS fund. We are taking these recommendations to the general stakeholders within the country. We're saying that we are considering this recommendation and that recommendation. This other recommendation is not something we're considering right now. What are your views on these recommendations that we are approving? And from there, we take all of the information, all the feedback that we get, and then we formulate a policy, which will then be put out to the public domain for discussion, and then that's how bills are eventually crafted. So it's a process, and this is the early stage of the process.
Well, maths don't lie, Minister. So is it that I'm sure that the data is being crunched in terms of the amount of people we're talking about and the amount of contributions that would accrue from them going to 65? And how will that assist the NIB in their current financial situation?
Yes, of course. And what the ILO has determined, that even if every single person that possible who could or should make contributions to the NIS, even if every single one contributed, of course, if you're contributing, it means you have to receive benefits on the other side, right? Even if everyone did, we would still have an issue with the fund and the longevity of the fund. And that's why we have used various strategies to try to extend the life of it, because the main challenge that is being faced by the fund is the fact that people are living longer, healthier lives. And that's the one that needs to be addressed. It's a positive and good thing, but it comes with various challenges. And we're going to be seeing challenges based on that throughout our economy as we move forward. If you take a look at the effects of an aging population, you will see there's a lot that comes with that in terms of how public policy is developed and advanced.
Well, healthcare becomes more costly generally, and the state has to take care of the persons who reach that age group, because generally you have more health challenges and stuff like that. So, and they may not be generally active contributors to productivity.
May not be so, yes. And if you look at the newspaper, even in San Fernando East, I mean, you see birthdays for 100-year-old persons on a regular basis. I mean, I have a great aunt. She's 104 years old. We started a benefit package in Tapland East where the MP would go visit persons when they reach 100, bring a gift, congratulate them and so on. And we had to shelve it because it was every week we were getting someone. And it just became a program that we couldn't manage. We couldn't develop the time for it. So, people are living longer. People are.
The other aspect to our discussion,
I'm not sure what you just said is a positive thing.
Is the well, he
Let
couldn't
it
help it.
fly.
It's either you could afford it or you can't afford it.
What do you recommend, Wendell?
Well, I know it just sound like we hated on old people now.
No, it's not like they can't afford to continue the program. That's what it sounded to me.
We are trying to make sure that elderly persons who have given to this country can be taken care of for their entire lives for as long as possible. It's to ensure that everyone can receive benefits into future generations, whether it's grandchildren, great grandchildren, that everyone can benefit. That's what it's about.
The other aspect, Minister, with this is the issue of compliance, and that came up recently, and how government is dealing with the lack of compliance by some stakeholders.
Yeah, well, in the lower house last week, we passed the Insurance Act, which is going to be coming to the upper house this week on Thursday, where we are implementing an amnesty for those who have not been compliant with paying their NIS. By matching payments made for the PAYE, we can tell that the difference between employers who would have paid PAYE but did not pay NIS. And according to that, we believe that about 4,000 employers in Trinidad and Tobago are not compliant with making their regular NIS payments. Now that we are able to track such persons, we are going to really crack down on persons who have not been paying their NIS. But at the same time, we're implementing this amnesty to give persons an opportunity to become compliant, because we understand that the country has just come out of a 2-year global crisis in terms of COVID, where some persons, especially the SMEs, would not have been up to date on their payments. So we want to give them a chance to get up to date and to make their payments and be compliant. But the penalties for persons who are not compliant are going to be extremely strict and severe, and the NIB is going to be coming after those persons in a very stringent manner from here forward. So
But
that's
Minister,
what this is about.
Yeah, long before we had COVID, we had people who were just very negligent in terms of paying their NIS for their employees.
Agreed.
Long before COVID. So don't let COVID be an excuse.
Yeah, and that is right. I don't think those who are non-compliant, it's not generally COVID. They were non-compliant long before.
The NIB had an amnesty, I believe it was in 2012, right? But the NIB also did a random sample of companies in terms of trying to determine the ones that have not paid. Because we have recently developed a strategy in terms of checking against the PAYE, now we can be very much more targeted in the way we go after persons who are not compliant. So we have a new tool in our arsenal in terms of dealing with persons who have not paid. But getting back to the main issue, even if every single person possible paid, we will still have challenges with our NIS fund going forward within the next 10 to 15 years. So that is why the retirement age is the main one that we are trying to deal with, because of course moving retirement age up increases the workforce while reducing the number of persons that receive benefits at the same time, without us having to cut benefits or increase contributions. And that's what makes it the most palatable option of all that have been presented.
Is there a timeline
I saw that
involved?
look on Richard's face just now.
Anytime I am just somebody who has a literal interpretation of English. So that from the time you say retirement age rather than NIB or NIS benefit age, which are two different things, it becomes an anomaly in my mind. And when you say retirement age is something separate and distinct in my mind from an NIS benefit age, which is what you are saying it is.
I think ultimately that's what they want to do.
Yeah, when I meet people on the street, the number one question is, will it be optional? And I tell them, yes, it will be optional, and you will still be eligible for the other benefits, some of the senior citizens grant, old age pension, the other things that are available will still be available. So, but it's, as I said, it's the early stages, and eventually we will come to the public with what our final position on this will be.
What
Now,
about self-employed people? There's always been an issue of people who are self-employed, and a lot of them would like to be NIB registered, but they can't at this point in time. Has that been given any consideration?
That is also one of the changes that is being made in terms of allowing self-employed people and also daily rated workers to participate in the NIS fund. But also, remember, once you are making contributions, it means you become eligible for benefits. Yeah. And also, we have to be very careful in terms of introducing persons who were not in the fund before because of the number of payments. Some persons will introduce themselves now, but may not have made the number of required payments that others would have to make. But then they are eligible to receive benefits on the other end. That also doesn't benefit the fund.
Well, they won't get a pension. They'll just get a lump sum.
They will get a pension. They will get it. But they're still receiving payments. But but they have made less contributions than many other persons. But we are bringing them under that safety net also.
But isn't there a minimum of 750 contributions, I think, to be entitled to the pension?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But if you're bringing in persons who are self-employed, and some of them, I know, might be in their 40s, 50s, or wherever at this point, they would be eligible to receive benefits.
Right. So they'll get a kind of lump sum payment after they make, but they won't get the 750. I don't think so.
No, that's the point. They won't get there, but they would receive a benefit. But you see what I mean? So you increase the number, the benefits that are going out, but you barely increase the contributions coming in. So the fund is still being negatively affected by that.
Yeah.
Even if you bring all of those people under the umbrella, which we are working to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine. Maybe you could look at different rates.
Yeah, as a friend of mine from the NIB says, it's like a water tank, right? And you have contributions coming into this tank of water. So the water is the NIS fund. And the NIS fund is invested in local stocks, equities, also in international. Now, you can get a higher return on international equities. So we're expanding, I think it's 20% now. We're trying to move that up to about 40% of the fund in US dollars so that we can invest more internationally to get a higher return so that we can use more of that to meet our required payments. And then coming out on the other end, we have the benefits. So because persons are living longer, there are a lot more benefits going out than contributions coming in or returns from the fund, which are used to pay the benefits. So we had to do something to stop the bleeding, as they would say.
So it's a multidimensional strategy.
Correct.
Is there a timeline on the retirement age consultations and government plans for implementation if the stakeholders agree?
We should be finished with our stakeholder consultations within, I would say, the next few weeks, by the end of July. And from there, Minister Imbud will decide what we do next.
Minister, has there been any concern over some of the investments that NIB would have made over the years? We would have heard things like purchasing of a restaurant. I know that they had purchased that defunct gas station on Western Main Road in St. James, I think. That's now just an empty lot with homeless people. You know, what about those types of investments?
The NIB would have done some strange things in the past, but I promise you that none of those things will or have happened under this government. We are extremely strict in terms of how the NIB invests and what they invest in. And you can see that in the results from last year. The NIB had a record 14% return on investments. But even with those investments, even someone thought at some point that was a good idea, those investments would be minuscule. The NIB fund is approximately $31 billion. It is the largest fund in the region. Those small investments wouldn't severely affect the fund, but of course, it's not something that we would condone or support at this point in time in terms of investment for the fund.
Yeah. All right. So is there a move to relinquish those investments or to cash in on some of those investments?
I believe there is. I think I saw something the other day saying that the restaurant is being disposed of. I'm not sure of other assets that may be on the books that are being considered, but I'm sure they would come to the Ministry of Finance at some point to go over exactly what should be done.
Mm-hmm. All right. Bitcoin.
No.
Did you say
That's
no?
my simple response. No.
Well, I want to get I've had so many people try to encourage me in this Bitcoin
Listen.
thing that I have resisted it.
Like the
And I
organo
know that,
gold millionaires, right?
huh?
Like the organo gold millionaires.
Well, I ask people, I say, show me something that you would have purchased from your Bitcoin investment, that you buy a property or you bought a vehicle. Show me that, and then maybe you might be able to convince me. And nobody could tell me. They just say the money just building. And I say, well, why is it
Yeah, they
you
want to
building
buy
for
with,
what?
with your money, you see. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They want to buy with your money. I
Yeah.
tell people, right? First of all, never, you don't have to be a Yale, Harvard economist. Never invest your money in something you don't understand. Okay, that's the bottom line. If you don't understand it, don't put your money in it. Right? Bitcoin, in my view, and the view of many economists around the world, does not make any financial sense or economic sense. Right? A simple thing like who invented Bitcoin? It's a gentleman named Satoshi Nakamoto. Nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. It's a made-up fake name. So you have this instrument that nobody knows where it came from, who made it. And you're going to take your hard-earned real fiat currency and put it into something that can have its value cut in half overnight. You know, why would you do that? If you have fiat currency in your pocket, it is supported by which government ever issued it. For example, people like to say, well, the U.S. dollar is not backed by anything. Yes, it's backed by the full faith and guarantee of the U.S. government. It means that they have to accept this money as legal tender. It is also the international business currency, which means that it is accepted all over the world, and its value is guaranteed all over the world. What is guaranteeing the value of Bitcoin? Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. And that's why its value is so volatile. It could double tomorrow, it could be half today, and your money at the same time jumping up. It does not make any sense. And as anybody, old people used to say, you know, if it's too good to be true, you know, it probably isn't good.
Yeah.
I have somebody asking me a question here, Minister, about tax return refunds. They said they're still waiting on 2021. Is there any update on that?
Yes, well, I mean, we understand the financial crunch that the government would have faced during the pandemic. We have received some influx of cash coming from the energy sector within recent months, but of course, there's a lot of debt that is to be paid off. The Minister has stated publicly that one of our major priorities is paying off outstanding payments to business people in Trinidad and Tobago, especially VAT payments, and we are working diligently to do just that.
All right. So the government's firm position, just going back to the Bitcoin issue, is that they will not endorse it.
Absolutely not. When it comes to Bitcoin, it doesn't make any sense. There's nothing you can do with Bitcoin that you cannot do with fiat currency. If I want to send money to a friend in wherever, Azerbaijan, it doesn't matter. There's simple apps on my phone that I could use to send money from my bank account to their bank account. That money that transaction is checked, it's recorded, it is within the system. The challenge with Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is anonymous and it cannot be registered, it cannot be tracked, and that's the problem with it. The only thing Bitcoin is good for is for illegal transactions. And that's why when you see a lot of the cyber terrorism online, people will shut down power grids and so on, then ask for a ransom. It's always in Bitcoin. They don't want US dollars with serial numbers on it that can be tracked. Bitcoin is difficult to track. So that's why they ask for that. It is only good for up to now for illegal transactions. Next, when you're moving on to mining for Bitcoin, the challenges with building a data center to mine for Bitcoin is that it uses an extraordinary amount of energy. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we have low energy rates because a lot of that energy is being subsidized by the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. So basically, taxpayers would be funding the mining of Bitcoin. So mine something where you cannot guarantee what the value of it is going to be within the near or distant future. It could be zero, it could be $1 billion, nobody knows. And there's nothing that is there to manage it. There's nothing, no regulations. It's the wild, wild west. It is not something that the government is willing to look at this point in time. There's just too many questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm of that opinion too. So
Yeah, the data center that's being proposed by one corporate entity, I think, was going to use about 70 megawatts. I think it is. And right now, we are in the process of building a solar park, which will be the largest in the region, of 112 megawatts, I think is what it is going proposed to be. I mean, that's almost 3/4 of the entire energy output of the largest solar park in the region on one project that does not dramatically improve employment or add anything beneficial to the country. So it would be irresponsible for the government to support such a project, and we are not going to.
all right, well,
All right.
we had to close off now, Mr. Manning. We've reached that stage in time of our meeting of our program. Sorry, almost say meeting. Yes, I just said the word Manning and meeting come to mind. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Brian Manning, for being on the Power Breakfast Show this morning.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. All the best to you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. Everyone, Trinidad and Tobago, please be safe and have a fantastic week.
All right. And tell your mom hello from all of us.
I will do so. Thank you.
All right. Take care. All the best. All right. Of course, that was Mr. Brian Manning. News up next.
Calling all alumni of the former Mukurapa Junior Secondary School, now Mukurapa West Secondary, between the years 1972 to 1975.